Hello students, welcome back. We'll be looking at acid nomenclature. To identify an acid, you'll typically see in front of the compound a hydrogen ion or a H in the front, followed by a negative anion. So you'll see a hydrogen in front of a chlorine, a hydrogen in front of a bromine, H in front of a S, H in front of a H2, SO4, but typically you'll see a H in the front of a compound. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part you'll see that H in the front, followed by a couple other elements. So to name an acid, you're going to follow a couple rule sets. There's two different ones, binary and ternary. For a binary acid, you're going to have two elements. The first one will of course be H, since you're going to have H in the front, followed by another individual element. In binary acids, you won't see oxygen, so no oxygen. You'll see a H and another element. In this case, I have an A as a placeholder. That A could be a Cl or a F or a S or a I, and so on. To name a binary acid, follow some very simple rules. First one being, start with hydro for the name. So this hydrogen, we're not going to put hydrogen, we're just going to put hydro. That hydro means no oxygen and also tells us that it's an acid. You see a hydrogen in the front followed by individual element, name hydro first. The second element, that anion, you're going to take the IDE version of its name and change it to IC. There will be a few exceptions to that, like sulfur. So if I had chlorine, for example, we change chlorine to chloride, and since we're changing that IDE ending to IC, chloride becomes chloric. So if I have HCl, I know this is a binary acid because I have H in the front and I have Cl on the back. That's two elements and no oxygen. So I name hydro, then chlorine changes to chloride, which then changes to chloric, or in short, chlorine changes to chloric. So this is hydrochloric acid. For the most part, that'll work most of the time. There are a few exceptions, like H2S. H2S is a binary acid. It has hydrogen in the front, has sulfur in the back, no oxygen. So I name first hydro. Now, I'm not going to change sulfur to sulfide. Instead, this one becomes sulfuric. So it pretty much keeps its whole name and gains IC on its whole name. Sulfur and phosphorus are some of the few exceptions to that ending change there. So whereas chlorine changed to chloride, changed to chloric, sulfur just changed to sulfuric. It straight gains IC to its whole name. Ternary acids have three elements, one of which is oxygen. So these will have oxygen in them. They will be polyatomic ions in addition to that hydrogen ion. So you'll see H in the front still, you'll see oxygen in the back, and then you'll have that middle element, which is part of the polyatomic ion. When we have a ternary acid, we do not want to name hydro. Hydro means no oxygen. We have oxygen in this compound. So you're going to use the polyatomic name and change it. So if your polyatomic ion has an ATE ending, you want to change it to IC. If your polyatomic ion has an ITE ending, you want to change it to OUS. So for example, if I have NO3, NO3 is nitrate. I change nitrate to nitric. So then if I had HNO3, this is now an acid with a polyatomic bound to it. I'm not going to name this H. I'm not going to name it hydro. I'm just going to call it by its polyatomic ion, which is NO3. Again, NO3 is nitrate. Nitrate becomes nitric. So HNO3 is nitric acid. H2SO4 is another ternary acid. I know it's an acid because it has H in the front. I know it's ternary because it has those three elements, one being oxygen in there. So I want to name it based off the SO4 name. So SO4 is sulfate. 8 changes to ic. This will be sulfuric acid. And just like the last exception, sulfur is still an exception here, where it uses its complete name and it gains IC. So let's do a couple of examples. First, you got to figure out, is the acid binary or ternary? So HBr, got an H in the front, I know it's an acid. Has one more element, I know it's binary. So I'm going to follow binary rules. First rule of binary, hydro's named first. Hydro for the H and no oxygen. Bromine changes to bromic. Bromic. We went from bromine to bromide to bromic, and we get hydrobromic acid. Next up, we got HF. I know this is an acid because it has H in the front. I know it's binary because there's two elements total, no oxygen. So to name a binary acid, we start with hydro because it's an acid with no oxygen. F is fluorine. Fluorine changes to fluoride. Fluoride changes to fluoric. So this is hydrofluoric acid. Next up, H2S. I know it's an acid because it has H in the front. I know it's binary because there's just two elements. Doesn't matter that there's a subscript, it's still just two elements. And there's no oxygen. When there's two elements and no oxygen, we name hydro. S is sulfur. Sulfur is an exception. You just add IC to the very end of the full name. So sulfur with IC, that's hydrosulfuric acid. Next up, H2SO3. Well, this is ternary. I got three elements now, and one is oxygen. So hydrogen with oxygen is a ternary acid. You do not name hydro. Just go with the polyatomic ion name. SO3 is sulfites. I'm going to change ITE to OUS. But sulfur is one of those exceptions where you add it to its full name. So I'm going to finish out its full name as sulfur, then add my OUS. So H2SO3 is sulfurous. Next example is HClO. I have hydrogen in the front, so I know it's an acid. I have three total elements, so I know it's ternary. One of them being oxygen, so I definitely know it's ternary. When we have a ternary acid, we do not name hydro. Hydro means no oxygen. We have oxygen, so no hydro. We're going to name it based off the ClO ion. HClO is hypochlorite. Don't confuse hypo and hydro later down the line. So we got to change this ITE ending to OUS. So hypochlorite becomes hypochlorous acid. Next up, we got HC2H3O2. Once again, we got a ternary acid. We got our hydrogen in the front. We got oxygen part of the polyatomics. We know we're ternary. Ternary, we don't name hydro. Go straight to the polyatomic ion name. C2H3O2, that's acetate. So if it's an ATE ending, we want to change that to an IC ending. So acetate becomes acetic acid. Next example, H3PO4. Ternary acid, got H in the front, three elements, one being oxygen. We do not name hydro. We go straight to that polyatomic ion. PO4 is phosphate. So we got to change the ATE ending to IC. Now, Phosphorus is one of those exceptions. It has a little bit of its original name added back to it. So I'm going to add back the O and R. Then I'm going to add IC. So H3PO4 becomes phosphoric acid. Then our last example, HNO2, ternary acid, hydrogen in the front, oxygen with it, so we know it's ternary. So then, ternary we don't name hydro. Go straight to that polyatomic ion name. NO2 is nitrite. So I want to change nitrite, the ITE, to OUS. So nitrite becomes nitrous acid. And that is acid nomenclature. Hope this video helps, and good luck on your tests.